We go from a sapphic horror full of terrifying moments to a book about a woman who fucks balloon animals. To you a little bit because it's not as good as you think it is. Hi besties, it's Shar back with my single fucking brain cell because it is in fact the last day of 2023. And as such, I want to give you my wrap up for November and December. I read a number of books in December. If you're new here, I was participating in a challenge where I read 30 books in 30 days, or at least I attempted to because I did not get near that number. But without further ado, let me tell you about the books that I read in November and December and my general thoughts and whether or not I would recommend it to you. So throughout the months of November and December, I ended up reading 23 books, but I want to tell you about 2 of the 3 books that I'm currently in the middle of. I'm currently in the middle of Mexican Gothic by Sylvia Moreno Garcia. Yes, you heard that right, besties. I'm finally reading this book. I'm in the middle of Butcher and Blackbird. Mexican Gothic and Butcher and Blackbird, I do want to finish before the end of the day today. For reference, it's almost 4 p.m. on December 31st, New Year's Eve. I will wait to give you my review of Mexican Gothic when I do my reading wrap-ups for the first quarter of 2024, but I do want to tell you about Butcher and Blackbird right now, just initial thoughts and initial impressions because I do have them. And if you don't know what this book is about, Butcher and Blackbird follows the story of 2 serial killers who fall in love and have lots of sexy times. Number one, this book is much steamier than you would expect. At the end of this book, I haven't gotten to this point yet, but I know that it almost competes with Morning Glory Milking Farm in terms of the amount of fluids coming out of this man. The other thing I want to tell you is that this reads very millennial. And I mean that as someone who is very much a millennial, but it's millennial in the way that in the 2010s, everyone had like that so random phase and everything had a mustache on it and everything had to be named Bob. That's the level of this. I will not lie to you. I will tell you many times throughout this book, I have cringed. Also, the characters feel very immature for the age that they're supposed to be. And sometimes I feel like they're about 14 years old, and they very much are not. But again, you're going to hear my final thoughts and full review for this book when I do my first quarter of 2024 wrap up. Just want to let you know I am in the middle of that and perhaps de-influence you a little bit because it's not as good as you think it is. Here's my little reading journal. If I look this way, it's because I'm not going to remember this consciously. I need the notes. I read 5 books in the month of November and I read 18 books in the month of December. In November, I purposely limited my reading because I knew I was taking on a massive reading challenge in December and I wanted to make sure that I still stayed in the mood for it. So I started November off with The Ravenous Dead and The Twisted Dead, both by Darcy Coates in her Grave Keeper series. I've already spoken about this in my I read Darcy Coates' entire backlist video, so if you're interested in that, go check out part 2 because you'll see my full review for both of those books. I gave The Ravenous Dead 3.5 stars and I gave The Twisted Dead 4.5 stars. Then I read Love Theoretically. You can see her behind me on the top shelf. Love Theoretically, my gosh, you know that Taylor Swift song where she's like, "And I wouldn't marry me either, a pathological people pleaser." That's our main character because my gosh, is he a pathological people pleaser. Emphasis on the pathological because my girl changes her entire fucking personality depending on who she is hanging out with. And you would think I would enjoy this book. It was fine. I gave it 3.75 stars and that honestly, it felt more of a story about our main female character than it did about the love between her and her rival. Some of the premise was interesting, but of all of Allie Hazelwood's books, like full-length novels, not the novellas, this is my least favorite. And because I'm easily influenced, I read Murder in the Family, which is a mixed media book following a Netflix true crime documentary about this very wealthy family in England whose stepfather, the patriarch of the family, was found murdered. Now, there were some very interesting plot twists in here, and the audiobook for this is really phenomenal. I recommend that you listen to the audiobook for this book if you want to check it out. But ultimately, I found that this book was very repetitive. The plot twist was the exact same plot twist about 5 different times. And if it wasn't for the premise of this is a Netflix documentary being told retroactively, I think it would be a pretty mediocre book. And so I gave this book 3.75 stars. Also, for the Darcy Coates reading vlog, I read Secrets in the Dark, which is part of the Black Winter series. Know that I gave that book 3 stars. And just like with the other Darcy Coates book, I have an entire Reading Darcy Codes backlist video where you can hear my full thoughts on this book. Which brings us nicely into the month of December. December started off with a bang because I read Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies, and as you all know by this point, this ended up being my #1 book of the year. I was absolutely obsessed with it. Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. Ooh, look at my little hair standing up. Anyway, Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies is a true masterpiece in my mind of a fairy tale-like story. In this book, we're following Emily Wilde, who is a academic. I believe she's a professor, and she's doing research on fae and fairies throughout the world, because in this world, fae and fairies very much do exist, and you're able to catalog and research them. So she goes to this very small, icy town to try to research this. And what I loved about this is the romance between her and Bramblebee. I refuse to call him Wendell. Not that there's anything wrong with that name, besties. It just reminds me of iCarly, and I can't get that image out of my head. I've read this as part of Riley Marie's Patreon, and she described Bramblebee as being almost like Hal from Howl's Moving Castle, and I so agree. He's very mischievous and such a fun character to read about. I love the adventures of all of the characters in this story, and I love the fairy tale like elements and atmosphere of the story, as well as the wintry setting is super fun. Then we move on to Vera Wong's Unsolicited Advice for Murderers, which you can also see behind me on my bookshelf. This was such a cute, cozy mystery about this older woman who runs a tea shop, and she's very lonely, and one day she finds a dead body at the bottom of her store, like at the storefront. She calls the police, but she decides that the police are incompetent and she will solve the murder herself. This is a classic cozy murder mystery in the truest sense of the genre. I really enjoyed it, but I did find some of the characters somewhat insufferable, and in terms of murder mysteries, it felt like a fairly standard one, although the character development for each of the characters in this book is done very well, and you do come to feel that they are fully developed people who you can have some level of attachment to. But then I decided that I really wanted some Christmassy romance vibes, so I read Set the Record Straight by Hannah Bonham Young, which is a friends to lover sapphic romance set in the holiday period, where two friends agreed to fake date because one friend is in a situation with her ex, who is now engaged to another woman. The woman that she happened to be cheating with, her ex was cheating on her. Then we also have another woman who just landed her dream career with her dream photography agency, but her boss thinks that she's gay, and rather than correcting her boss, she's just like, I'll get a fake girlfriend. So she and her best friend decide to fake date. This is a novella, so it gets very steamy very quickly. I gave this 4 stars. It was super cute for what it was. It's very steamy if you're looking for a steamy sapphic romance, but the nature of this being a novella did not lend itself well to a fully fleshed out story, and then I felt like we had a very quick jump from when the character believes that she is straight all the way to realizing that she is in fact queer and being in a relationship with a woman, and also how our main female character comes to term with getting into a relationship with her best friend. I feel like that was not explored enough, but I did really enjoy it. I'm gonna have to move a little bit quicker here. Bloom, I read in a vlog. You can check that blog out. This is a story of Ro, who lives in this small town, and she meets a woman named Ash at the farmer's market, and she thinks Ash is the most beautiful woman she's ever seen, and so she ignores some of the very, very massive red flags that Ash is throwing at her. It is a horror. It is full of dread. It is creepy. It most certainly is full of some very, very disturbing scenes, and I had a really great time with this book, but I did ultimately give it 4 stars, and that I felt that there were some issues with pacing, but also that it was very predictable exactly what was going on, and I had a different preconceived notion of what would happen by the end of this book. Hilariously, right after reading Bloom, I read Squeak. We go from a sapphic horror full of terrifying moments to a book about a woman who fucks balloon animals. That's damn right, you heard me correct. A woman who fucks balloon animals. I read this for the fun good times, and I do have a video coming up on this, so I shall refrain from giving you my full thoughts and opinions, but know that this book was poorly edited, and I did give this book 2.75 stars. December was just a month of wins, apparently, because I read The 7-Year Slip, which you can also see behind me by Ashley Paulston, and I'm happy to tell you that I adored this book. I gave it 5 stars. You would have seen it in my best of year book. In this book, we're following Clementine, who is dealing with grief after losing her aunt, and she moves into her late aunt's apartment. The apartment is magical, and that's every once in a while you'll be thrown 7 years in the past within the apartment, and that's how she ends up meeting Ewan. She and Ewan develop this complex relationship. They fall in love. It's very cute. It's very sweet. It's very emotionally packed. I adored it. I give it 5 stars. And because I was still holding on hope that I could somehow read 30 books in 30 days, I read Pretty Human by Ruby Dixon. an ultimately forgettable sci-fi romance. Pretty Human follows this woman who has once again been abducted by aliens, ends up on this planet where she has no idea what happens, but she knows that she has been sold to someone else. Luckily for her, someone takes an interest in her. They're mates, they fuck, they have sex, they move to their planet, they run away. In true Ruby Dixon style, it's very comedic, although I do have some feelings about some of the darker topics that were discussed in this book. And ultimately, like I said, it was very forgettable, and so I gave this book 3 stars. Now, on the same page is a book that I found on Kindle Unlimited, independently published, and I'm happy to tell you it is so fucking good. This is a sapphic romance, friends to lovers. So we have 2 friends who've been best friends since college. They've been best friends for over a decade. One of the friends is going through this kind of love drought. I speak about this at length in my best of 2023 books. Again, one of the books in that series, I believe it's best book published in 2023. This is such a good time. It's friends to lovers in a really well done way. At some points, it felt superficial though, and this was definitely too long for what the story was, so I gave this 4.25 stars. I'm just genre hopping throughout the month of December because I read Christmas at the Grange, which is a spin-off to the Lady Hardcastle series. It's not officially part of the series, but it's a very cozy Christmas mystery, not a murder mystery, just a mystery where you get to see more of this village that Lady Hardcastle and her maid, Flo, live in, and they just get up to their usual shenanigans. It's very short. All of the Lady Hardcastle books are on Kindle Unlimited with the free Audible companions. This book was like less than an hour to listen to on Audible, and I really loved it. I gave it 4 stars. And I attempted to enter my sci-fi girly age until I realized that perhaps I am not a sci-fi girly because I read a much beloved book, All Systems Red. That's right, I read Murderbot, and I thought it was just okay. This is such a short book that I really can't tell you much about it without spoiling anything, but just know that we're following Murderbot, who is this being that was created for the sake of security protection and assassination and killing, but Murderbot has no interest in all of that. Murderbot just wants to watch reality TV shows all day. That's Murderbot's true passion and desire, but of course they are a Murderbot, so they have to do their duty, and you follow the shenanigans that happened on this planet with a team that Murderbot has been assigned to. It was fine. I gave it 3.75 stars. Then I read Princess Ever After because it happened to be on Kindle Unlimited. This is a children's graphic novel, I think. I honestly couldn't tell you anything about this. I know what it's about. It's a princess saving another princess and saving more people. The story was somewhat there, but really underdeveloped, and I don't have any space to judge this story as a children's graphic novel, and so I gave it 3 stars. Whispers in the Mist is again part of that Darcy Coates reading vlog. If you want to see my review, go watch that section of the video. They are time-stamped. I will have them linked below, but I gave this one 3.75 stars. The same thing is true with Silence in the Shadows, except that Silence in the Shadows is the last book in the Black Winter series. I absolutely adored this book, but by the nature of it being the final book in a 4-book series, I really can't tell you anything about it. But again, if you want to go check out my Darcy Coates vlog and you want to know my full opinion, it is in that video, and I gave this one 5 stars. The Holiday Trap I read for my Christmas reading vlog. It was a very cute story, bogged down by its dual point of views and dual storylines, because this is one book following 2 different stories. One is an Achillean love story, and the other one is a Sapphic love story. The Sapphic love story was the weaker of the 2, in my opinion, just because the love interest was really not a primary character. You rarely saw her, and she was only ever introduced when they were gonna fuck, and the Achillean love story didn't have enough time to fully develop due to the overambitious nature of cramming 2 stories into one book. I gave this one 3.5 stars though, because I did really enjoy it. Camp Spirit is a graphic novel on Kindle Unlimited set in the 90s for this girl who is reluctantly a camp counselor due to the meddling of her mother. She does not want to be there. Camp Spirit is hella fucking weird with lots of very scary paranormal things going on. With that said, the characters were endearing, the story was interesting, there was an underlying current of fear throughout this, which I thought was very well done. But there were some narratives and conversations that made me personally uncomfortable and question whether or not the author was the person to tell these stories. But I did give this book 4 stars. I was still delusionally holding on hope that I would read 30 books in 30 days, despite the fact that this was 2 days before Christmas and I was well over 12 books behind. There was no point in which I would ever actually catch up, but I continued to try. So I read Would You Like to Be a Family, a manga of 3 Achillean love stories following 3 different storylines. What those storylines were, I don't know. All the characters look exactly the same and that they're drawn the exact same fucking way throughout the entire manga. None of the plots actually felt fully developed. I didn't believe the love between any of the characters in these stories, and I gave this manga 2 stars. Which, you know, says quite a bit for me to give a manga such a low rate. And finally, besties, I read The Man Who Died Twice by Richard Osman. If you're new here, you know that I really did not like the Thursday Murder Club, and while I cannot spoil any upcoming videos, so I will keep my review of this brief, know that the second book was more of a win than the first one, and you will hear and see my full thoughts on the Thursday Murder Club series in an upcoming video sometime within the first couple of months of 2024. With that said, besties, that does bring us to the end of this video. Thank you so much for watching. As always, I hope that you did enjoy it. It's been such a pleasure spending 2023 with you. You're watching this in 2024, so I hope that the new year is treating you well. Please subscribe if you are not already. I'm posting 2 videos a week throughout 2024. I hope that you stick around, and I shall see you in my next one. Bye!